in our bi-weekly meeting, we were informed that we should be doing the system startups this month, and we should have drinking water by the end of May, early June. So that'll give us an additional 3 million gallons a day capacity.
No more water emergency.
For a while, anyway.
Yes, for a long while. Thank you very much, guys. Appreciate it.
Okay, the next proclamation is for Police Week in Gardner. Take this off again. Likes to muffle the sound. Whereas it is important that all citizens know and understand the duties, responsibilities, hazards, and sacrifices of their law enforcement agency, and that all members of the Gardner Police Department recognize their duty to serve the people by safeguarding life and property, by protecting them against violence and disorder, and by protecting the innocent against deception and the weak against oppression. And whereas the members of the Gardner Police Department are known for their faithful and loyal devotion and dedication to the preserving of the peace and safety of every man, woman, and child living in our fine city. And whereas the police officers of Gardner, Kansas are engaged in a difficult and sometimes dangerous profession, which at times can lead to injury or even death. And whereas the police officers of Gardner, Kansas unceasingly provide a vital public service to ensure that we do sleep peacefully at night. Now therefore be resolved that I, Steve Shue, Mayor of the City of Gardner, Kansas, do hereby proclaim May 9th through the 15th, 2021 as Police Week in the City of Gardner, Kansas, and urge all citizens to reflect on the ways in which our lives have been touched by the peace officers who stand guard over our neighborhoods, and to participate in the tributes to the memory of those officers who have lost their lives in the line of duty. Chief Belcher.
Yes.
Come on up, sir. You might have one of the toughest jobs in the entire county, sir.
Well,
And I appreciate your hard work. I appreciate the tireless effort that you and your staff, your force give for our community every single day. I know that a lot of the folks in this town have been around their officers in their neighborhoods and have been seeing our officers out there in outreach to our citizens. We've also brought on a new community policing officer, Erica Drinkard, who's doing a tremendous job out there spreading the good word about our force and how it's helping to enhance our community. So I wanted to give this to you, and you can say some words.
sure. It's our honor. We have such a great community here, and our community supports us so well. It's truly our honor to serve. We have very hardworking men and women in the Gardner Police Department. We're so very proud of them. So thank you very much. We appreciate the support from the governing body, the city directors, and our community. Thank you.
All right, we will move on to the next item in the agenda. We have a public hearing scheduled for the purpose of receiving comments for a request for a waiver of distance limitation for sale of domestic table wine and beer within 200 feet of a school, church, or library during the farmers market events. So I would entertain a motion to open the public hearing.
So moved.
Second. Motion Deaton, second Baldwin, that we open the public hearing for the purpose of receiving comments to a request for a waiver of distance limitation to allow for the sale of domestic table wine within 200 feet of a school, church, or library during the weekly farmers markets events to be held on Thursday, 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. from May 13th, 2021 to September 2nd, 2021. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions? The public hearing is open. If you wish to come forward, speak your name and address for the record. Try to keep your remarks under 5 minutes. There's a clock over here to my right, your left. And no profanity, no personal attacks. With that being said, the public hearing is now open. Seeing no one coming forward, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved. Second.
Motion Gregorczyk, second Deaton, that we close the public hearing. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions? The public hearing is closed. Moving now to public comments. Members of the public are welcome to use this time to make comments about city matters or items on the agenda that are not part of a public hearing. Again, the ground rules are the same. 5-minute time limit. The clock is to my right, your left. No profanity, no personal attacks. Please state your name and address when you start to speak. With that being said, the podium is now open for public comments. Gary.
Thanks, Steve. Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council. My name is Gary Carson. I live at 140 Brittany Court in Gardner. Because of COVID and other issues, people have been trapped at home or have put up any vacations. A few months ago, a few friends of mine and I came up with an idea to hold a music event to bring friends together for a small invitation-only event in mid-July. But when I inquired about renting the amphitheater, I was told that citizens cannot rent the amphitheater. A few days later, I was informed that I need to ask the council for an exemption to the code in the form of a waiver to hold the private event. We're expecting around 130 people, more or less. Sharon, could you put up that graphic, please? Thank you. We're expecting around 130 people, more or less, to attend the invitation-only twilight event, featuring 3 live bands. I can assure you that it won't be as loud as the bands that have played in the past during the festival and the Trails event. The sound will be tuned to the size of the audience, and we expect to be done around 9:30. The event will start at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, so it's kind of a twilight event. I'm asking the council for their consideration in granting this waiver. We'd like you to take everything into consideration, including the proposed parking diagram, which you'll see up on your screens, that lays out public parking, and as you'll notice, parking is contained to the east side of Center Street. We have taken into consideration that the pool will be open during this time, but since the event is taking place in the late afternoon, we do not foresee any issues. I'll leave the questions to the council, and even though I won't be present for the entire meeting, I hope the council will discuss this matter, come to a conclusion, and let us know your decision. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you, Gary.
Thanks, Sharon.
Anyone else?
Hello, my name's Jake Carmack, and I'm the front guy for Accidental Project, which is a band that's been helping Mr. Carson put together this event for your community. We don't live in the community, we live in Kansas City, but we just really, the impetus of the whole thing was a celebration that we're getting past all of this craziness. I truly believe we are, and by then it's going to become even more apparent, I believe, and that's worth celebrating. And we just wanted to give the people of Gardner an opportunity to enjoy that, to come out and see. I mean, it's a invitation-only thing, but hey, it's in a public park. I'm sure some people are going to be interested and come on by, and they would certainly be welcome to come and listen. The music is not ruckus and loud. It's kind of a country rock kind of thing that we do, some blues, things like. We have a bluegrass band that's going to play, and another guy that plays an electric banjo who is just amazing. And you've got to, I hope everybody takes an opportunity to come out and listen. But we would really enjoy and appreciate the opportunity to have some fun at the park. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Dennis Watson, 670 South Mulberry, Gardner. I'd just like to say that I'm very pleased to see that you still do the Pledge of Allegiance at the beginning. This is a season where there's a lot of division and there's a lot of attack against our Constitution and our way of life. even coming from the highest seats of government and influence. So I just see it as even more important for state and local governments to stand firm with our values that we know are livable and profitable for our city, our county, our state, and our nation. Where truth, light, and justice are prevailing, then there continues to be peace and prosperity. And I just say, I thank you for standing up for the things that are true and right. Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. Anyone else? Seeing no one else coming forward, let's move on to the consent agenda. Is there any member of the council who wishes to remove an item from the consent agenda?
Number 6?
Number 6. Anyone else? All right, I'll entertain a motion on consent agenda items 1 through 5.
So moved.
Second.
Motion Deaton, second Baldwin, that we approve consent agenda items 1 through 5. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Consent agenda items number 1 through 5 passed. Consent agenda item number 6. Consider authorizing the mayor to execute a settlement agreement for compensation due to eminent domain condemnation in connection with the Gardner Municipal Airport. Councilman Gregorczyk, questions?
Thank you, Mayor. Jim, I just want to confirm that the $235,000 is coming out of the airport fund. Is that correct?
That's correct. And it'll eventually get reimbursed.
By what?
FAA maintenance.
Okay. That's all I had. Thank you.
All right, no problem. Yeah, 'cause we had already pledged a portion of that already, waiting for the FAA to make that determination, right?
Yeah, we paid $500,000 to take title of it. Then we kind of went into negotiations, and we got a settlement now.
Correct.
For $235. And this year, we can get up to, I think, $666,000 in AIP funds at 100% rate.
Okay,
We think they're going to make us pay a 10-90 split for the future remaining funds.
understood. Okay,
Well, we're also getting all legal fees and all costs that we incurred and fronted as part of the acquisition, including appraisal fees, title work, all that stuff. That's getting refunded.
great. That sounds good. Thank you very much, City Attorney. Any other questions? Yes? Okay. I'll entertain a motion on consent agenda item number 6.
So moved.
Second.
Motion Gregorczyk, second Deaton, that we authorize the mayor to execute a settlement agreement for compensation due to eminent domain condemnation in connection with the Gardner Municipal Airport. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Consent agenda item number 6 passes. There's nothing on planning and zoning consent, nothing committee recommendations. Old business item number 1, consider adopting an ordinance amending chapter 2.05.040 of the municipal code of the city entitled Governing Body Rules of Procedure. Sharon?
Hello, I'm back again.
Yes.
So, as you may have seen in the Friday Minute Memo, the Governing Body Rules of Procedure was first adopted on March 18th, 2013 by Ordinance 2424, and it provides the necessary guidelines for the conduct of orderly meetings of the governing body. It contains rules and procedures found in city ordinances and includes best practices used by municipalities throughout the Kansas City area. The document is intended to provide staff, the governing body, and members of the public with a single, transparent information source regarding these guidelines. As such, it contains information derived from various sources, including ordinances, policies, and direction from the governing body. The Governing Body Rules of Procedure is incorporated into the Gardner Municipal Code by reference. At the April 19th, 2021 council meeting, the governing body provided direction to review the Governing Body Rules of Procedure. And staff did find some redundancies. However, staff believes that removing entire subsections will strip the Governing Body Rules of Procedure from its context by removing those partial sections. So this will actually just bring the Governing Body Rules of Procedure in conformance with the Charter Ordinance 29 that was unanimously approved at the last meeting.
Thank you, Sharon. Any public comment on old business item number 1? Expect any, but have to ask. Any questions for Sharon or for City Deputy City Administrator Nasta. Yes? Okay. All right, then I will entertain a motion on ordinance 2701.
So moved.
Second.
Motion Deaton, and second Winters, that we adopt ordinance number 2701, ordinance amending chapter 2.05.040 of the municipal code of the city of Gardner, Kansas, entitled Governing Body Rules of Procedure, and incorporating by reference the governing body rules of procedure under provision of KSA 12-3009 through 12-3012. City Clerk.
Councilmember Deaton,
Yes.
Councilmember Winters,
Yes.
Councilmember Gavorsic,
Yes.
Councilmember Roberts,
Yes.
Councilmember Baldwin,
Yes.
All right, ordinance number 2701 passes. New business. New business item number 1. Consider a request for waiver of distance limitation to allow for the sale of domestic table wine within 200 feet of a school, church, or library during the weekly farmers markets events to be held on Thursdays, 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. from May 13th, 2021 to September 2nd, 2021. City Clerk.
This is a housekeeping item in relation to the public hearing held earlier this evening. A local winery has requested to sell sealed bottles of wine not for consumption on site at the Gardner's Farmers Market.
Okay, great. Well, comment on new business item number 1. Okay, questions? Yes,
Quick
Council
question.
President. Yes.
Why specific domestic table wine? I mean, is there a difference in?
That is the license they hold through the state farm winery license.
It's part of our
That's
liquor
what
laws.
it's called in their licensing.
Their license?
Kind of like it'd be, table wine would be different than religious wine,
Okay,
things like that.
okay. Just curious.
Yeah, our liquor laws are messed up. in the state, but that's another discussion for another day. All right, any other questions?
I support it.
All right, I will entertain a motion on new business item number 1.
Moved.
Second.
Motion for Gorsuch, second Deaton, that we approve a request for the waiver of distance limitation to allow for sale of domestic table wine within 200 feet of a school, church, or library during the weekly farmers markets events and to be held on Thursdays, 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. from May 13th, 2021 to September 2nd, 2021. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Abstentions. All right, new business item number 1 passes. Let's sell some wine. Anyway, that is it for our regular business. Council updates. Does staff have anything for council? And I might start with the city administrator because I never do, and I won't forget you at the end. And you've got something kind of important to talk about, so I wanted to give you that opportunity.
Okay, I handed everybody a map of the south portion and southeast portion of Gardner and Edgerton. There's been a petition with Miami County for a new city south of 215th Street, bounded by 239th on the south, Gardner Road on the west, and Cedar Niles on the east, to be called Golden, Kansas. The county administrator in Miami County reached out to me, the city administrator in Spring Hill, and city administrator in Edgerton, with a series of questions that generally just ask about population, city growth, whether we're capable of serving the area with utilities, and whether it interferes with our natural growth pattern for the future. I can generally answer those questions. Jennifer Williams, who is in the audience, is the one that submitted the petition, and she has asked that we do what Spring Hill did and have the mayor author a letter to support the creation of this new city. So I wanted to get some consensus on, one, whether anybody on the dais thinks that this is a impedance to our future growth, and it is completely in Miami County. And two, whether there's an endorsement to support this with Miami County.
I'll open up for questions from any of the members of the governing body. Is there a consensus to move forward with the letter, or is there additional questions that need to be answered?
So, our approval or our endorsement of this, is that something that they feel is necessary for to continue on, or?
So the statute requires all 5 commissioners in Miami County to approve it. I think it's more of they require required to find out if there's any objections for any city within 5 miles of the proposed new city. So I think Jennifer's just looking for an endorsement to help their cause and to move this forward.
Mr. I personally, maybe I'm just, hung up on semantics. I don't know if endorsement is the right term I would use. More, I don't have an objection to it.
More of a letter of support. It's not binding.
Yeah.
It's a letter of support, and basically what they're talking about is basic. Again, it comes down to the Miami County Commission.
Sure.
I believe it has to be unanimous in order to be able to pass and be enacted. I don't remember the last time Northeast Kansas had a chartered city. It's been a while. But what they're looking for is just something that says, Gardner is not interested in going out into that area. We don't believe it's an impediment to our growth, and we would support the creation of that incorporated city, basically.
I'd be for that.
I'm okay.
I feel like this forces our hand as far as between Moonlight and Cedar Niles, whether or not we ever want to go further south, where we were already talking to Spring Hill about where we would kind of meet in the middle, if you will. So what are your thoughts, City Administrator, on where that plan was going, talks you had on that eastern side of Golden on precluding our ability to go further south?
So I never envisioned or got the impression that the council was looking to go south into Miami County to 215th Street.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
That's. I'll be honest. Anything south of 207 is probably not in our planning area. But we, obviously reserve the right to expand. But we didn't want to deal with any kind of Miami County incorporation issues. I'll be honest. It's tough on Spring Hill to be straddling two counties, and I wasn't interested in anything like that in the future. I don't think that there's any appetite from anybody else on this body to take that on either.
Once they're a town or city or however
It's a
they're
city,
gonna
yeah.
do that, they'll be able to annex and go north, though, correct? And come out of Miami County if they so choose. And there's a lot of areas for them to move north if they so chose to. Would that be an accurate statement? And then there's nothing that the county commission or us as a city could do. Would that be accurate?
that's a great question. Actually, I didn't
Well,
contemplate that.
Johnson County would have to approve.
The Johnson County Commission would then be involved with
It'd
this.
just be the opposite,
But-
but you're
Yeah.
right.
Even if they're a town, they have to get approval from the county to annex
Yes.
into the county.
And I think the premise of the potential Golden Kansas is to stop what you're alluding to.
I would agree with
Well,
that.
I just wanna make sure, because if, they do this and then they start jutting up north and where we want to go, there's nothing stopping them from annexing property like we annex property and.
Well, I think it would behoove us at that point to discuss an annexation boundary agreement with Golden.
I can verify that
I mean-
that's not the case, that they could come north.
And that's just me thinking off the top of my head, just seeing this. I support this. I think it's.
I think it's great that those landowners got together and came up with a solution to
I agree.
their problem that they were having. And yeah, if we support this, I do think we should talk to them about annexation boundary agreement.
Absolutely. And I think that the folks that I've spoken to that are part of this effort to move in, to create Golden are very open to being a good neighbor with Gardner and working with us on regional plans and things like that. Obviously, we've got a regional watershed plan that we're dealing with. This area is entirely north of Hillsdale Lake, just north of Hillsdale Lake, but south of where we are. So our watershed flows through their city. So absolutely, there will be some discussions we'll have to have regarding interagency agreements and things like that to protect that watershed. So
I support a letter.
okay.
I have no objection.
All right. No other objections. I think we've got a consensus. We'll draft that letter and get it sent.
Thank you.
And thank you, Jennifer, for coming out.
Thank you.
Appreciate your effort on this. We know you've been very busy down there. So, thank you again.
So just one more thing.
Yes.
It's actually relevant to this area, but tomorrow I have the first meeting with the county administrator, county staff about the Southwest Johnson County area plan. And we are going to approve the scope of that plan tomorrow, and then I'll come back at a future meeting, probably either the next meeting or the meeting after, to get a representative from the governing body to be part of that core group. So, and we're going to visit streets, wastewater, water, all the things that were part of the original plan. So that's moving forward.
A question I have, which also pertains to Golden, is that, let's say we move forward, I don't know how long it's going to take to incorporate this community. I don't know if it's a 6-month period or a 1-year period or.
June 23rd is our hearing, and then after that, if we're approved, they've allowed for 2 weeks so that in case there's enough comment that's necessary.
Sure.
And then after that, if they allow that, then we should immediately go forward to have our elections for our mayor and our council. And then from that
Wow.
point on, we should be able to go forward and start writing our ordinances and everything, getting it in place. So I'm hoping this is a summertime completion.
Okay. Well, the reason why I asked that question is because as part of that regional plan that we're talking about, we may want to invite folks from Miami County and Golden to be a part of it, especially the watershed plan, the environmental plan that's being drafted.
Well, Miami County is part of the core group.
Yes, they are.
And,
Good.
and we're going to have residents. Each jurisdiction is going to have one resident in the core group, and
Good.
then we'll have broader representation
Wonderful.
at meetings.
Wonderful. So, just wanted to have their backs on this.
Thank you.
That's one of their biggest concerns, right?
Appreciate it.
So, okay. Thank you. Chief Belcher.
Nothing tonight.
Nothing denied. Okay. City Clerk.
Nothing pretty.
Nothing. We just wanted to let folks know, as part of the consent agenda, we did approve reappointments for 2 members of the Planning Commission. Steve McNear and Maya Ham are reappointed. I wanted to point that out to everybody else. We got a pretty solid Planning Commission group. It's good to keep them together and keep that continuity. So, thank you. Finance Director Wolf.
Yes, staff has had some internal discussion about the old police station property, and we had a recommendation for the council to hold on to it for now, because we think it will increase in value as we complete the reconstruction of Main Street. So kind of after that project's done, then we can reevaluate what's the best way to use that property.
So Matt, I support that idea considering the studies that have been done down there and the downtown corridor plan and kind of what that looks like. What are the taxes on that property vacant?
I don't know off the top of my head, but I can give you that information.
I think that would behoove us to know and go ahead, I'm sorry.
I'll say like it currently has no taxes because it's a government purpose, but I don't know what it would be if it was private sector. I mean, we'd have to if we sold it, then it would go back on the tax rolls, and I don't know what that number is.
Yeah, I understand that, but are we using it to the point that meets those criteria for no taxing of government entities?
Oh,
This
every
is just a
property we own.
plot of ground down.
it's just a plot of ground.
As long as it's owned by the city.
Okay,
Yeah, we're exempt from from the tax rolls.
Okay.
All of our properties are. So.
fair enough. I support holding it though.
Yeah. Well, it makes sense from a long-term perspective too. We can take a long view on this and make sure that our downtown corridor, whatever happens with that, fits in with that. So it's kind of a reason why. All right. Deputy City Administrator Nasta.
Nothing tonight.
Nothing tonight. City Attorney.
Nothing for me.
Nothing. Gons Garcia, Utilities.
I got an email from Water One on Friday saying that the water line extension to Grada started on Friday. They estimate 50 working days to get it complete, so they're estimating mid-July, end of July.
That's good news.
Yes, sir.
A little concerned about it taking as long as it was. So, excellent. All right, Jason Bruce, Parks and Rec. You've got some news.
Well, first off, baseball, softball, t-ball is kicking into high gear right now. We have over 750 participants registered for that, so you'll start to see practices picking up next couple weeks. We'll start the game season first part of June, wrap it up the end of July. Park maintenance staff is trying to keep up with all the mowing. Excuse me. Pardon me. And programmers are gearing up for summer activities. So it's starting to, business is picking up for sure.
we're still on track for pool opening Memorial Day weekend?
No, it would be the weekend after.
Yeah.
The 5th? June
Of
5th?
June?
That's that first Saturday.
June 5th, all right.
Mayor, if you don't mind, Jason, can we get more details about how we're doing the pool and the passes and the reservations and all that jazz?
So what we have proposed is we are going to offer 3 2-hour sessions, 7 days a week until we start our school hours. It'll be $2 per person for a 2-hour session. Those will be online registrations, and staff is currently working on setting up that software, testing all that. And then we're still working on fine print as far as inner workings of the Aquatic Center, but we won't have deck chairs, so we're going to communicate to people to bring their own chairs. Concessions will be limited, things like that.
Once the summer pool season's in full swing, will it just be open like it was pre-COVID, or are we gonna hang on to this reservation idea?
As of right now, our plan is to keep the reservations, see how it goes, see what kind of restrictions get lifted, any sort of recommendations from county health department on what we can do. But as of right now, that's what we're shooting for, is the sessions.
Okay, thank you, sir.
And that's meant to manage the capacity restrictions, manage the capacity of the venue, correct?
Correct. And what we're going to do is, to start with, do 500 participants per session per day. So basically, allow 1,500 people access.
Jason, what are how many hours is the pool open then in a day?
For this session?
For any session, how long is it open? Like from what time is it open?
So we'll start at noon. So we'll go noon to 2. Then we'll have a 30-minute window for sanitization.
Okay.
2:30 to 4:30. Another 30-minute window. Then 5 to 7. And then we'll have pool swim lessons after that.
Okay. I just want to make sure you accounted for the time that it's going to take to get people out.
Correct.
Back in.
Yep. Yeah, we have that 30-minute buffer.
Okay. Great. Oh, and I also heard you had some news about Independence Day too.
Oh, yes,
Yeah,
thank you.
Yes, I wanted to give you that opportunity.
Okay. Yes, so we learned that Dylan Scott, I believe it's the week after he performs here in Gardner, will be on tour with Luke Bryan.
He's the lead. He's
That's
the
our
lead.
headliner
He's the
for
opener.
Independence Day. So it's exciting news. He's taken off on the radio, so I'm sure you've heard him on there quite a bit lately.
Mm-hmm.
So we're expecting a nice crowd and nice weather for sure.
You don't listen to the Wolves.
It's okay then. Hey, I'm happy.
All right, thanks. Development, Dave Nopick.
Well, you just reminded me we got our first official fireworks stand application today, so
Yay.
we're getting ready in our office for that to come in. Actually, I'll be sending letters out to the previous permit holders, encouraging them to get their information in as quick as possible. The only other thing I have is we have EDAC meeting next week on Wednesday, I believe, and it'll probably be at the Justice Center again.
Great, great. Hear those good things happening in that group.
We're keeping busy, let's just put it that way. There's a lot of behind-the-scenes things happening right now, a lot of conversations about a number of properties.
Okay, Kellen is not here this evening. Do you have an update for Parks and Rec? City
He didn't have anything. He was traveling. He's trying to get moved and all that stuff.
It takes a little while. It's coming from the East Coast, you know, it's a little weird out there. So, I heard Ryan chuckle on that one. I don't know why, just Ryan, but anyway. All right, so let's move on to council updates for staff. Does council have anything? I'm going to start with Casey Deaton.
I have nothing.
Nothing. Tori.
I have nothing. Thank you for asking.
Thank you, Councilman. Appreciate it. Councilman Gorsick.
Oh,
Yes.
I do.
Yes, you do have something.
I
Okay.
forgot.
That's all right.
I didn't know if we wanted to talk about if there was consensus for the exemption, the waiver for the concert.
Yes, I think I was going to hold that till later, but
Okay.
yes, we can start that right now.
Or we
start
can
that.
wait till everybody goes around and do it at the end. Sorry.
That's fine. I think that we can start that conversation. I don't have a problem with that. So what kind of waiver are we talking about here? And how would this apply to, because I saw some correspondence going around earlier on today about a
two different types of waivers, and I just wanted to get a sense of what waivers are applicable and which ones are not.
Dave, you want to talk about where that's at in our code and how that?
Yeah, there's a couple different things, but one of the items from a zoning perspective that we have in the code, this activity, because of the nature of having the bands, the food trucks, the invitations, things like that that are going out there, this would be considered a temporary use of the property. And I know there's been some discussion out there about accessory uses versus temporary uses and things like that. The best way that I can think of to describe this relatively easily is the principal use of a park is for the gathering of people. It's a public park, it's meant for public use and things like that. What makes this request different and kicks it into an event category is the idea of having the bands, having the food trucks, having these other things going on that aren't necessarily a part of or an accessory to the typical gathering or the typical individual use of a parkland. So that's what kicks it over to what we call a special event. The special events in our current LDC are located under what's called the temporary use portion of our code. As part of that, a temporary use permit is required. The problem from the zoning perspective is that our code does not allow temporary uses in residentially zoned properties. Most of the city parks are residentially zoned. So that's where we get the kicker on this that makes this pretty difficult. We have been consistent in applying that. We had a request last fall for a similar type of activity in the sense of the gathering of people and having these kind of cursory activities with food and potential bands and things like that. And we had told those folks, no, you could not do that here. So we're applying the same interpretation consistently across the board. So that's kind of the context of where we're at from the LDC standpoint. So one of the things, if you were thinking about a waiver, you'd have to think about, can we waive that temporary use permit requirement for this activity? The concern with that is how do we judge moving forward as we get other requests like this? You know, how do we differentiate this? That's purely from the LDC standpoint. I don't know, Jason, if you want to talk to others.
If other people came, would they come and it would be a waiver or exemption? Would city council have to decide that every time, case by case, or is it?
We would potentially be coming back to you to keep clarifying, depending on the nature of those activities and what they're asking. So, you know, we can establish some consistencies, but again, each one of these becomes a little bit of a unique event in their own right. They don't always use food trucks, they have something different, or there's some element to it. The key on special events is that one of the reasons you look at these permits is that notifies our emergency services groups that something is happening and going on. So it's important to have a tracking mechanism for those kinds of things in the future. But to your question, yes, it could potentially come back to you again, depending on this interpretation. What we're informing you of is the consistency that staff has held to at this point.
So, Tori, if we make an exception, then the next time somebody comes and we don't make an exception and we have to justify that and we can't not make an exception based on content. So if somebody comes in 2 weeks and wants to have something over there and the content is something that is objectionable, we can't say no based on content because that would expose us to liability. So internally, staff has talked about taking the special use permit out of the land development code. So then we could put it in our municipal code and develop criteria that people have to meet in order to get a special use permit. So things like no amplified music, you know, we can set terms where people, if they follow it, they can get a special use permit. And it would go through every department so that, say, if somebody wants to do something that will require the police or require fire, then we can have measures for cost recovery in the permit application.
That sounds like the permits that KCMO issues. All those are based on, you know, there's a specific fee, and then there's fees for personnel, for fire and police protection, for traffic control, you know, and those kind of things. We are not that sophisticated with this particular use. that's one of the problems we're running into here, is that our code, or not, that portion of the code hasn't kept up with the needs of our parks. And there is an issue there regarding liability, as well as traffic control and public safety, you know, doing
So,
it this
is
way.
it, what if like somebody rented the pavilion and had a birthday party, like you said, and had live music? Is it because that would be a smaller group and this is, or what's the difference between that and this?
There's a
You know what I mean?
prohibition on
We wouldn't issue a permit for that, yeah.
Okay. What if they had 100 people?
I'm not sure about if we have restrictions on the number if they rent a shelter.
We don't. The only restrictions we have as far as capacity is the senior building. But as far as our outdoor shelters, there is no quote-unquote capacity.
Yeah. The live music is a potential nuisance, and that's the problem. The way it's defined right now in the code is that live
So
music can be
Somebody
considered.
could rent the pavilion, have live music.
No. They can rent the pavilion. They could have
Right.
150 people there, but they can't have live music.
Right.
Could they have a food truck?
There's some permits that have to be issued to the food trucks, and I don't know if those food trucks can set up in the parks. or not.
We would not allow them to set up on our
Park
property unless it's a city sponsor.
Yeah.
And I'm going to differentiate something here. I get a little sticky with these words, as you know, and not to step on the city administrator's toes, but I want to make sure we all understand. Special use permit isn't even on the table here. We're talking about a special event permit.
Temporary.
So,
Yeah.
temporary, it would be a special event permit. Special use permit has a totally different connotation, and it's used officially for other actions by the planning commission folks. So I just want to make sure we make that differentiation here. And you can tell, you know, as Jason and I have been talking, there's two sets of requirements here. There's the LDC and the zoning part of this, and then there's the park policy part of this. So there's a little bit of differentiation that we're trying to rectify in all of this, as we've been talking behind the scenes.
I just wish we could come to some compromise or something, because it's a city park that is used for people to gather and have things, and I don't know, I wish there was a compromise. I get we can't set precedent, I understand that, I just wish there was something we could do to
The long-term,
make this happen.
the long-term fix to this would be to do what Director Knopik has said, which is remove that from the zoning portion of the code, and set up a set of, you know, objective criteria that would need to be satisfied that could be used at every park, and then you can potentially have what you're asking about. Right now, that's not possible, and I don't know how long it would take to make those changes to code.
Well, there would be two steps. We would have to make an adjustment in the LDC, which requires a public hearing before the planning commission
Yes.
before it ever gets to you. Then the second step is the amendments or the ordinances to pass for the municipal code. That's not quite as long a step because it comes right to the council at that point and is under your control. I will say the surrounding communities, I did a little bit of research on this over the last week. Spring Hill, Olathe, Lenexa, all have special event permit situations. They are not exorbitant in cost for the actual permit because, again, the city is more focused on knowing about the activity and the events so that the emergency services groups are informed of those events, and they know what they're walking into in case they get a call on a Saturday. They know what's happening there and they know what kind of environment to expect. So they go through that process there. Now, there are certain elements in those permits in regard to sometimes insurance and things like that because the provider or the activity host needs to have insurance in case of damage and things like that. So there is a way to work this, and that's right, it's the long run. It doesn't necessarily, I don't know that it can get done in time for the event here that's being talked about. And that puts it in a precarious position because he needs to advertise in advance. And if we don't have an outcome in time, the event may not happen, but then all the advertisement's been out there.
And keep in mind that when you open that door, regardless of permit, that you cannot restrict people based on content. So we open that door for, I mean, some people might not find different music objectionable and some people might. But you cannot deny a permit, even if it's something that they have to go through. You can't deny it based on content.
Am I correct in there were a few other venues that were offered or suggested that would be allowable, like fairgrounds possibly, or?
Yes, when discussing this with Mr. Carson, I told him he could reach out to the fairgrounds, possibly the church behind City Hall. I believe he had communication with the Legion as well. So yes, there were other venues that were discussed.
So my comment, I guess, is trying to make lemonade out of lemons here. I mean, I value the process. I'm looking at that for potential change, not specific to this one event, but really understanding what facilities we have to potentially host larger events besides just private VIP Carson type, Mr. Carson type events. So I don't know if we want to look at that more from a tourism perspective and be able to kind of kill two birds with one stone. I mean, we have a great opportunity, if we have the facilities during the Independence Day celebration, to put this gentleman that's going to open for Jason Aldean on a true stage, if you will, with, you know, seating that's built out of, you know, the dirt and everybody's on a blanket. And I mean, I think we've all been to those types of sandstone type of place, and be able, to your point, Jim, manage that a little bit better and put it in a position it in a place that doesn't have a strong residential impact. Maybe at Celebration Park out on the northwest back 40, you know, that type of space that we could do some dirt work and, you know, upgrade maybe the wheelchair accessibility to it, the roadway. They've already got some parking there at the ball fields, et cetera, and be able to kind of, again, just take this opportunity to build it into something. I think in the short term, it's going to be a tough hill to climb otherwise.
Well, I think this
And Jason has talked to Gary about providing transportation services to the 4th of July event that had been difficult for him in the past. So we're going to make a modification to our shuttle system to accommodate wheelchair.
And coming back, this all comes back to the Parks Master Plan. And obviously, we're in the middle right now of revamping the master plan. It's needed some rework. One of those things is, okay, how do we manage large events? How do we manage entertainment? What kind of additional venues we want to look for? What's our land acquisition strategy for parks? Things like that. So that's going to be considered during this whole process. So it's good that you're bringing it up now, Randy, because it's going to be discussed.
Okay.
Yes, Mark.
I absolutely agree we don't want to make an exception. But I do think we should do the long-term plan. We should start on it as soon as possible. And for the main reason, regardless of the event, I think it's a cool event. But I dislike any time there's a taxpayer-funded anything. So a park, a widget, a fire truck. I know, revolutionary for me, right?
Yes, yes.
That we restrict more than we allow, right? So I would love to see it be the other way around, where instead of it's restricted down and you have to get special anything, it's open all the time and these are the criteria that we shut you down. So if we can make something objective, flow chart, check this box, I'd be all for it. So I would like to get going on that.
Kind of like our regular construction permit process.
Kind of like that.
Okay. And I think that would be something that we could accommodate, I think. We just got to work on it.
So I have a couple of clarifying things.
Yep.
He's talking about Cornerstone Park. When you rent a park, you rent a park shelter. If we don't allow the rental of the amphitheater, then I assume that's what he wanted to use was the amphitheater. So if I rent the park shelter, is my group allowed to merge to the amphitheater? Do we have to stay to the shelter? How does that work? Because we're not even renting an amphitheater for him to hold the event.
Correct. It's just like if you were to rent, pardon me, any of our shelters, you're not just restricted to that place. It's open public space. The shelter is theirs that they pay for to house their birthday party or graduation party, but they can still utilize the amenities within the park.
But since his was a ticketed event, citizens can, like, again, if you rent a park shelter, you put a sign up saying, hey, this is rented, don't
I believe in our destination downtown plan, we have some revisions and restructuring of the way the park's laid out and connectivity, you know, between City Hall and the park. So that's already been addressed in that downtown master plan.
And then my other question, so we can't deny permits based on content, but if we made criteria of, you know, you have to check these boxes of, I assume, make sure that we have enough parking, things like that, as part of the criteria, could we do no amplified foul language, no amplified slurs, things like that? So if the music has a bunch of foul language, because obviously you don't want that blared next to our pool, could we add that as part of our criteria that you have to follow, or would that still be considered content that we would have no grounds to police?
Yeah, you know, I'd have to look at that a little bit more. I mean, anytime you get into content-related type of restrictions, you get in trouble. You know, there is an exception under the First Amendment for ability to regulate obscenity. And that's, you know, been defined over however many decades, case law. But, you know, I think whatever you all, whatever the consensus is about this issue, then, you know, let me know what that is. I can go and research it, what's possible, what's not. What is very clear though is, you know, if you wanna, if you let Mr. Carson have his event, and then, irrespective of what your political persuasion may be, then it's gonna be wide open for basically every type of event. You can't say, you can't have political events there, or you can't have commercial events there. Once you open it up and you start leasing it, you're basically surrendering your ability to in any way regulate the nature of the use, other than, you know, content neutral time, place, manner restrictions. And so if you did want to regulate, you know, decibel level output, that'd be permissible. But, you know, if you wanted to say, you know, no hate speech or anything like that,
Or no bluegrass.
Then you're in trouble.
Cause yeah, a bluegrass band is great, you know, and
But
next,
rap, okay, like, you know.
yeah, the next
I mean-
band that comes in might not be great, and you've
I
got
know,
that
it's-
amplified next to a pool with small children, and that's something that our hands would be tied, and they'd be allowed to do it, I assume.
Okay, so it sounds like there's a consensus for us to look at unlinking the special event permit from the zoning restrictions, correct? That's one thing we're definitely gonna be looking at. Another thing we're gonna be looking at is as part of the as part of the LDC or as part of the municipal code, we would actually provide a list of criteria that's content neutral that would then govern how those parks would be utilized. And based on the size of the park, you can only have certain decibel levels or certain, you know, numbers of people. So instead of having 700 people trying to jam into Cornerstone Park, which would basically be a mosh pit at that point, you would have, you know, a restriction of 150 people. Does that make sense? And then also there would have to be a traffic plan and some sort of way to reimburse the community for any kind of overtime for police and traffic control and those kind of things. I think that would be part of this, would it not?
Yeah, I think you would look at a number of those factors. We would list that obviously out there. I think to Councilmember Baldwin's comments, the idea of having that checklist and what those capacities are or what we're looking at from the standpoint of a staff review so we can have this done fairly quickly administratively. Most cities, what happens is the special event permit comes in through an application process. It's distributed to a diverse staff team across the departments. They look at it from the different angles, like the traffic and transportation element of it, and what's available parking-wise and the capacities that they need for that. If there's reasons to deny it at that location, a lot of times there's suggestions made. For instance, Cornerstone may be a small park that doesn't have the ability to really facilitate that large crowd. So the suggestion might be, how about Celebration Park, or how about, some other facility that it would be better suited to. And the idea is getting these permit applications well enough in advance of the event that it can be effectively advertised once they're approved. So we would be able to get that fairly quickly. Okay.
Yes.
Dave, one thing with that, I'd really like to see, obviously the hardest part's gonna be coming up with the criteria. In that process, to the mayor's point about reimbursements and everything else, I think it's very important that we look at as many alternatives as possible other than just payments. In other words, if you want to go to this venue, it requires X, Y, Z. We've already approved this traffic plan, and that required this criteria. And if you have a group that's willing to do that, you can have volunteers do that, or whatever that we have criteria for that,
Sure.
right? And it just flows down. And then, of course, once we get all of this criteria and these wonderful flow charts, I would love to see them on the website.
That'd be good. That'd be nice and transparent too.
And I think what we want to do initially here too is make sure we've got a model for this that's relatively easy to implement initially. So when we're talking about all this criteria, there may be refinement over time.
Absolutely.
But initially here, I don't think we want to overstep that too far. I think we're all going to have about the same sensitivity. So when this kind of comes forward to you, you'll see things in there about noise, traffic, things in general that are there. It may not be specific to each particular venue per se, because the other thing the special event permit can cover, let's say we have a corporation in town that wants to have a corporate event and they're going to put up a large tent and do a barbecue for their staff and things like that. I know in a lot of instances the fire department as well as police are interested in where those are happening, when they're happening. So again, if they get a call, they know what to expect when they're walking into it. So this would go beyond a little bit of the public side of things, of public property, public use of public property. You would get into some of these more private venues that are large. Again, there are parking areas that are very accommodating of that. If you think right now, outside of the old Price Chopper, Price Chopper was still there and they wanted to do a special event in their parking lot and take a quarter of the parking lot for some type of customer appreciation event. That would be something that you'd still run through the special event permit process, look at all those factors.
Sure.
But again, it's allowing our emergency services group to have advanced knowledge so that if an event occurs, that safety factor enters into that.
Yep. Great, thank you.
Jason, the last question perhaps. Did Mr. Carson have any interest in the alternatives that you provided?
For the most part, he wanted it in the downtown area, obviously for accessibility, and just proximity and looking at having that shelter that he rented and utilizing the amphitheater. So he wanted it centrally located down here.
Okay.
So I think we've got a consensus. I don't think that there's going to be. Is there any have we discussed with Mr. Carson the possibility of maybe moving the event a little bit further out, giving us some more time on this?
I have not. No.
Would that be a possibility? Like if we said, okay, let's talk about late August to get something like this done. Can we get the pieces in place to be able to allow a new process to be created in time to be able to manage this event? That's the only way I can see that we could do this. I'll be honest.
I think administratively we could do it, but then you still have the issue of amplified music in proximity to residential property.
Correct. And that's where I was thinking that if we had some criteria for decibel levels and traffic, like if this particular checklist included, for example, a traffic plan and a public safety plan, that then would come back to us and that way we could manage it better. Or they could use volunteers to manage traffic flow or whatever, put on the glow vests and they can do it themselves, but
My concern with that would be if we tell them, hey, late August would give us enough time to make it through the planning commission and the council. All it takes is for either the planning commission or the council to table it because we want to look at criteria a little bit more, and he spent money on advertisement, and then we just tabled an item to think about it, and it didn't get through, you know, that's really hard to set a deadline on. You've got
Sure.
two groups of people that have to vote.
No.
That would be my concern if I were him.
I'm just thinking of ways to make it happen. That's why I bring it up.
Sure. I don't know how much I mean, it sounded like he already kind of had an idea who was coming. I don't know how much advertising he needs or how much leeway he needs. The bands are already lined up. I mean, I think as long as it works with their schedules.
I don't think we commit to a specific date and we work hard on it.
Yeah.
And then we keep in contact with Mr. Carson and we try to give him as much advance notice as possible of where we're at, and hopefully it does work out in the future for this year.
That's kind of what I was thinking too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd take it a step further and suggest to have him go out to Celebration Park, set up his own little stage and rent a pavilion out there, and there's not a lot of folks.
It
Coordinate.
wouldn't be allowed out there either.
It's
would
not
it?
allowed out there because it's a blanket restriction.
Okay.
Yeah.
Celebration Park is zoned R1.
Yep. It's a blanket restriction because of the zoning issue.
That's
We'd have
what-
to fix that anyway.
Right, the two areas that had been suggested, the fairgrounds, which is zoned REC, which is a recreational zoning, would have been okay. From this perspective, it would have been away from the LDC. And then this southern portion of the church property here was commercially zoned, so that was also.
So if he set up in the arena, he'd be all right. Or the stage.
You're talking fairgrounds?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. I think those options need to be clear to them. I don't, to everybody's point up here, I don't think that
There's not-
pressing the gas to try to go through the process is fair.
and it's
I
not
want to
gonna-
be very clear about criteria, because once you allow it with criteria and then we're like, oh man, we rushed through that, then we're
That's my
back,
point. I don't want to rush it.
backpedaling. I don't want to rush.
No, I don't want to rush it, but they just said that the arena is already zoned for that.
Mhm.
The arena is 150 yards from Cornerstone Park.
It's not far at all. And,
Yeah.
and it's got a canopy on it. It's nice and cool.
And if you rented it, I assume then the parking wouldn't be an issue, because
Parking would be on site at the.
got the parking and.
And I'm sure they're looking for revenue.
You know, we had that discussion earlier today. Same exact thing I said. They're looking for money, but I mean, it's we don't know. We don't know what Mr. Carson's budget is. We're kind of speaking out of turn on that, so we don't know. But it sounds like under the current regulations that are in place, we cannot have events at Cornerstone. Not right now. So, any other discussion? Okay, I think we have direction given to Dave and to Jason, so we'll work on that. Anything else, Tori?
Okay, I'm done.
Okay. Councilman Gregorczyk.
Thank you, Mayor. I just had two items. I'll go with the short one first. I'm glad spring is here and early summer is here. I know I've already mowed my yard 15 times and enjoyed every bit of it with libations to go with it. But how are we looking, Jim or whoever, on mowing of city right-of-ways and all that good stuff?
What areas are you talking about?
I'd have
Specifically?
I don't have any specifics.
Because for Parks and Recreation, we contract out most of our trails. I'm really not sure what Public Works contracts out or what they do in-house, but for us, we maintain most of our parks, ball fields, and then we contract out all the trails.
Okay, I'll just get them to Jim.
Yeah, and I know Public Works they've indicated they're mowing too, so. Is there an specific area you do?
Yeah, I've got them all written down. I apologize.
Okay.
I was prepared and then forgot, so.
Okay. Yeah, if you could get those to us, we could get
Yes,
it to
sir.
the right department for sure.
Be more than happy to. Appreciate that. Sorry that I forgot it. The last item, Mayor, is on the Park and Rec survey while we're talking about parks. I asked, I don't know, a half a dozen questions, and I'll just list them off right quick. Why was the survey suggesting? And just before I do that, I had 2 or 3 people reach out to me, and then I had the newspaper reach out to me as well. I made no comments, obviously, but this is a collection of all those questions, if you will, from basically those 4 people. But why is the survey suggesting we prioritize over roads, a tax-funded / special tax? What's the purpose of the survey? What are we are surveying pool usage and we didn't use the pool last year. What audience was this sent to and how will it be used? I will say before we go into the comment section that Ms. Nasta did a phenomenal job of providing the detail, and I've got it here as well as electronically that I can get over to Sharon for cut and paste if we go through that. But I had some similar questions, and then it boiled up with citizen comments, and like I said, the newspaper reached out to me, so I thought I'd bring that up.
Can I comment real quick?
You sit on.
Yeah, I'm on the book. I actually suggested that, so I take the blame or the credit for that, I guess. But I basically I just wanted, you know, everyone wants parks, and so I just wanted to kind of get a feel for how does that fit in their prioritization. I mean, yes, we want parks, but I mean, do we want to spend more money on parks? Do we want to spend more money towards streets? Or so I haven't even actually seen the question specifically, but I'll take credit for that. I didn't mean for it to be like, you know, we not want to put roads in and just put parks in.
Can I cut that off for 1 second?
Yeah.
So a major bias issue faced by surveys is respondents trying to guess the intent and intended usage of a question and then adjusting their responses accordingly. So it's important to note that the survey was developed with this in the front of our minds. So that being said, if the intent is to publicly clarify the purpose and usage of the funding question or any other question, the question will be invalidated. The reasons for this is because any respondent who answers after a public clarification will have been provided context and information that other respondents didn't have, and we won't be able to separate those out. So while I'm happy to provide that clarification, I would like to let the governing body know that if I provide it fully here publicly, we will have to invalidate that question and remove it. So I would urge you not to get too in the weeds on content and context of the questions until the analysis has been completed, and then you can see how the questions are utilized more clearly.
Well, and thank you, Ms. Nasta. I'll do my best to follow your guidelines. And I do value surveys. But going back to the parks, Todd, there's no blame here on my behalf. But I do know that there's pockets of our city that have 0 parks within walking distance. We were just up here talking about a special use of Cornerstone Park, to Mark's point, that's taxpayer funded. It's a wonderful park, it's a great location, et cetera, but yet we're constricting on what little inventory of parks we have, we're constricting usage of that small inventory. I support parks, I support sidewalks for safety, I support the master plan that I think, and Jim, you can correct me, says that communities should have a park within a mile or mile and a half radius of said community. I know we don't have a lot of that south of Old 56. I don't think we have a lot of that south of 183rd outside of Veterans Park, and that's pushing it if you look at even the mile and a half radius. So I support parks. I don't know that that's a special tax. I don't know that it's not a special tax. But I know that that is a part of the commitment, if I'm not mistaken, of that community and how that community is built and designed and so forth. We just talked about it with the Aspen 2.0 project, which that's not a part of Jason's portfolio by any means, but it did bring up some good discussion about where we are not aligned with our master park plan as we speak. So I'm excited to see the 2.0 version. I'm excited that we have people like yourself and other citizens on that committee, but you know, if we have a plan, we need to stick with it. And if we have a plan that we're going to introduce more parks, then we need to fund it or find a way to partner on said funding.
Totally agree. And just to clarify, there are no parks in Gardner south of 183rd Street. Even Veterans Park is north of 183rd. It's
correct.
It's close to 179th Street. So, yeah, we understand that. We acknowledge that there's gaps in our system. Our city is growing. We have more subdivisions coming in. And that is one of the reasons why we're reviewing the Parks Master Plan and making sure that we're committed to expanding and bettering our park system for everybody in the community. And we've got a lot of gaps, a lot of holes, and obviously those gaps and holes are going to have to be filled with dollars primarily, because you can't just snap your fingers and get a park. So that's one of the reasons why those funding questions were asked in that survey. I did take the survey and I understood the question, the intent. I did not see that as necessarily a dichotomy between, are you going to fund roads or are you going to fund parks? There's ways to do both. We just got to make sure that the priorities are set accordingly.
And thank you, Mayor, for that. Amy, last follow-up question. I only had two originally. But of that survey, how much of the survey has been taken and how long will it be out to survey, the period of time of the survey? And then what is the audience? I mean, how would somebody get the survey if they wanted the survey? And that's all I had.
So the survey is available on the website through our Facebook link. It was sent out through Textcaster to various different distribution lists, including anybody who had signed up for Parks and Recreation distribution list and was currently on there. The survey is going to be out through next Wednesday. And
what's the expected uptake? I mean, we know that about 14% of our community votes.
We've had 665 responses so far, and we'll be pushing it out on social media again later this week.
Okay, so not a very robust number.
That's actually higher than we usually get on many of our surveys.
That sounds pretty good, actually.
Well, I had higher expectations. I apologize. Thank you, Amy.
People, I found that folks in the community will get engaged if they know that it's directly affecting them in the short run. Parks plans are kind of up here in the high level, always have been, so you don't see a lot of response. But just like with the community surveys we do on a biannual basis, we get a very small portion back, but the folks that are engaged in those usually are the ones that are going to be involved in they're more just mentally tuned into the community. So we need more of those people. You're absolutely right. Yep. Council Vice President.
We all received an email about traffic around Nike, and I'm sure others have talked about this before. I've talked to the chief before about it, and he had mentioned more patrolling out there, and that one of the issues is that there isn't a great place to pull somebody over because you don't even have a shoulder, and that most of the problems you're having are either the trucks and or impatient parents doing something illegal. So we're doing the best we can, and down the road I envision that we will, I think we all do, have improvements to that road down there. In the meantime, I would like to see consensus that we have staff reach out to the school district and see if they can work on something, whatever they can do to do internal queuing or something, just to get the people off the roadway so that nobody's going around them in that no passing zone.
Council member, we had one of our detective sergeant who oversees the SROs had met with staff out there at Nike to look at their traffic plan, and it was determined that they're really doing the best that they can.
Absolutely.
With what they're snaking around the parking lot and stuff like that. We had that meeting probably a month and a half ago, 2 months ago, maybe even longer, that we reached out and met with them. Just not to cut you off, but just to let you know.
No, that's great. It sounds like already being addressed. Okay, well, in the meantime, hopefully everybody can pay attention to the actual traffic laws and wait their turn, and we can do something about that in the long term.
As a person who has an elementary school kid in Nike, at least for another month, I can tell you, yeah, they've done a lot of work with regard to internal traffic queuing in the parking lot. They snake every single row now is being snaked through. So it's definitely they've done everything that they can, and I think it's helping. But the biggest issue you've got, to be honest with you, is until 199th Street's overpass gets completed, you're going to see trucks coming north. we have discussed internally some options with regard to getting some exceptions to some of the state and federal mandates with regard to regulating truck traffic because of safety concerns at that particular location. But there's definitely a concern, and to be honest with you, as those plots of land south of town get developed, those 11 warehouses going in, I think that problem is only going to become worse because those long-haul truckers, their GPS will send them straight down Gardner Road, all the way down to those new locations, and it's something that we are already working on trying to get resolved. Obviously, it's part of the transportation plan for Southwest Johnson County, but it also requires us to have better coordination with our neighboring jurisdictions. And unfortunately, that's not happening very much.
Mark, I appreciate you bringing that up. Chief Belcher, do we have any sort of large signage like we see on I-35 that tells the truckers to go to exit 205, I believe it is? Do we have anything like that that we could put on just off the ramp and, just tell the folks that are going, what would that be, southbound on Gardner Road, do not pass? I mean, to Mark's point, there's not a lot we can do. I'm glad we're trying to partner with and/or the school district's already doing things on their own. I applaud them. But if we could put some big, gigantic, DOT-looking sign out there to tell them not to pass.
I mean, we can put a no passing sign, I believe that.
Yeah, we recently received a grant for a signboard, and we can put that out on the ramp.
So it's like electronic, Chief.
Yeah, and it scrolls.
Yeah.
It's just a smaller board, but I mean, we can put that out there on the ramp. Just reminder: no passing and passing zone southbound Gardner Road, because that seems to be the biggest issue is the southbound, because it's a hill.
Right.
As you're going up, and it doesn't turn into passing until you get to the top of that hill.
And if you're not from these parts, you may not know that. We could put it somewhere in front of the RV place, south or north of it. I don't know what the rules dictate, but just to give folks a reminder. But thank you, Mark, for bringing that up.
Yeah, the old Southwest Johnson County area plan contemplated a new road there to bypass and go around 195th, I believe is what it was going to be called. That's never come to fruition, so.
Now Tuscan Farms is there as well.
And that's going to be, that's going to be a battle. Yeah, on Gardner Road's going to be part of the battle in this whole process. Because we're supposed to, as a group, with Edgerton, Spring Hill, Miami County, Johnson County, Gardner, determine where these trucks should go.
And there's already some staking of positions happening
Absolutely.
amongst the municipalities and the county. So it's going to be a fight, unfortunately.
That's all I had.
Thanks, Mark. Council President?
Nothing.
Well, I think that we've had some good discussion here. We've got some work to do on our codes. Never ends, does it, Dave? So, absolutely. But I think we're moving in the right direction. Part of the fun. Hopefully, and oh, by the way, we still are on track, I believe, to have our US 56, speaking of on the right track, moving in the right direction, to have our US 56 project get underway sometime toward the end of July. So we're hoping that continues. We will see. We're having to hold the feet of our state folks to the fire on that one. So. If there's no other business, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot about the.
Tyler's like, you forgot.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Tyler.
Sit through this whole meeting.
Tyler's over there. He's like falling asleep, and Okay, so yes, we're not going to have a motion to adjourn because we have an executive session this evening. Thank you very much for that point of order. I will entertain a motion to recess into executive session.
So moved.
For how long?
I'll get to it. It'll be 25 minutes? Okay, all right, so we have a motion?
Second.
Okay.
Motion Winters, second Deaton. That we recess an executive session pursuant to KSA 75-4319B2. Discuss matters of attorney-client privilege related to a proposed development project beginning at 8:23 p.m. and returning to regular session at 8:48 p.m. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions? We stand in recess. Thanks for coming out.
Thank you very much.
We'll get that organized. I'm rooting you guys on.
I appreciate that, thank you.
Sure.
I'm afraid that there's been some infiltration down south at Tyler.
Entertain a motion to resume regular session.
Second.
Motion Gorsuch, second Deaton, that we resume regular session. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, any abstentions? We are back in regular session. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion Deaton, second Gorsuch, that we adjourn. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, any abstentions? We are out of here.